Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about 6 tips for becoming and staying disciplined. Tip number 1 is set small achievable goals. And by that I mean set goals that are realistic. What can you be doing now? What have you been doing now? It's better to focus on becoming a better versions of ourselves than setting unrealistic goals that are just going to get us demotivated whenever we fail to follow through. In my fitness journey, I wasn't always able to go to the gym 5 times a week and spend 1 to 3 hours at the gym. So what helped me to stay consistent was to set realistic goals for myself depending on what I was going through. For example, when I was in college, there were times that I would set a goal of going to the gym 3 times a week and my trainings would last 40 minutes. That's how I managed to stay consistent during those phases when I didn't have a lot of time to go to the gym. I've seen people that set very unrealistic goals for themselves. I had friends that went from not exercising at all to wanting to do the most advanced training at the gym and training 5 times a week, 1 to 2 hours a day. On top of that, they wanted to be eating very healthy all at once when their diet was not in a good place at the starting point. I seen those friends giving up. Those goals were not realistic for them. I think it's good for us to take a step back, assess where we are at, and see what progress we can make from that point. If with time you think that your goals are not pushing you as much as they should be, then you can adjust. But it's always good to start with achievable goals to make sure that we're not getting demotivated every time we fail, that we're actually getting motivated by accomplishing those goals. That's my first tip: set small achievable goals. Tip number 2 is find what works for you. By that I mean, especially now with social media, we tend to look at people's lives and look at people's bodies and think we want that for ourselves. The way people think is that you have to be doing the same things that this person is doing to achieve that same goal or a similar goal, and that's not true. We all have different ways of achieving our goals. We should never set our goals based on somebody else's lives or somebody else's bodies, because our bodies are different, our lives are different. We don't know what people go through. We don't know how people manage to achieve those things. Comparison is not the way to go. We all have things that are going to work for us. It may not work for somebody else. Just because somebody does this thing doesn't mean that you have to be doing the same things for achieving your goals. It's important for us to find what works for ourselves so we can stay consistent, and that's the most important thing. That's what's going to make a difference long term. That's my tip. Try things. If they don't work, you can always change, but find what works for you. Just stay true to the things that you enjoy doing. Tip number 3 is avoid comparisons. This one is easier said than done, but it's good for us to keep reminding ourselves whenever we start comparing our bodies and our lives to somebody else's. It's good to remind ourselves that's not a good way to approach it. That's only going to make us more demotivated, because guess what? We all have different bodies, we all have different lives. Comparing ourselves is only going to make us frustrated when we cannot achieve those things that we're aiming for. Avoid comparison. It's very different to be inspired by someone, but comparing yourself to somebody is never a healthy thing. It's only going to create unrealistic expectations. Sometimes, for example, I would notice that I was getting too much into my head, especially coming to a competition, comparing myself to other competitors, comparing myself to photos I would see on social media. Guess what? You can turn that off. You can give it a break. If you feel like the relationship with social media or whatever is not being good for you at the moment, give it a break. It's the best thing you do for your mental health. It's not good to be constantly comparing yourselves. Tip number 4 is set a routine. That helped me a lot to stay consistent with my goals. For example, a couple years ago, I started practicing yoga. It was hard for me to get started at first because we're gonna suck when we start doing anything. That's just how things are. You have to accept being bad at things so you can eventually be good at it. With yoga, it was like this. Nowhere near to being good at yoga, but what worked for me was to set a routine. Every morning I would wake up, grab my yoga mat and do 5 minutes of yoga, 10 minutes of yoga, whatever worked for me. It really pays off. Having a routine really helps us manage our times better. At some point, our bodies just understand that that's what we're supposed to do. We just start doing things more automatically instead of having those self-doubts in your head and questioning if you should be doing this or not, questioning if you should watch TV instead of going to the gym. Suddenly, when we set routines, our brains start understanding, okay, so it's this time so I'm supposed to be going to the gym. At this time, I'm supposed to be eating my healthy lunch and not any junk food that I find in the pantry. Set a routine that's gonna help you stay disciplined and keep your habits going. Tip number 5 is celebrate small wins. I think sometimes we get so caught in doing things, going after things that we forget to celebrate where we are now and celebrate our progress. That's why I think it's very good for us if we have a fitness goal to keep progress pictures to remind ourselves where we are at, because we have a tendency of being too critical of ourselves and thinking we're not good enough, we're not doing good enough. It's only when we take a step back and take the time to compare where we were at when we started and where we are now that we can have a picture of how far we have come. Take the time to celebrate those small wins. You don't need to always be focused on your end goal all the time. We need to appreciate those small wins along the way. I'm not saying that you're going to celebrate being good about your diet by just eating all you can, but you can do other things. Just reward yourself for achieving those smaller things. Even just appreciate it. You don't need to do anything special, but just take the time to reflect about it, see how far you've come. Be proud of yourself. Celebrate those small wins. Tip number 6 is find a community. I think this one is not necessarily applicable to everyone. Some people are more reserved, but I find that for most people it's important to have a community that's going to keep pushing you forward, a community that's going through something similar as you were going through. It can make it easier for you to follow through with your resolutions or your habits. It can make it easier if you have a friend that's going to remind you why you're doing this, keep pushing you forward and give you some words of encouragement. Having people that are going through the same thing that you're going through. I find that finding a community that you can talk to, that you can feel that you're being understood might help. Not all of us are lucky enough to have people around us that support us on our goals. Actually, many of us don't have this support with our friends and family. So I think it's important to get out of our circle and just find people that can actually understand what we're going through, that have some similar experience, people that went through what you're going through now, that can give you some advice, give you some tips on how to make things work for you, and maybe some people that you can just vent and complain a little bit when things are not going your way and when you're frustrated about something. Those people may help you, get you motivated and keep you motivated, hold you accountable and not let you give up, keep pushing you forward. So that's it, guys. That was just a few tips that I have, things that I've done in the past to keep myself disciplined and motivated to achieve my goals. I hope you can take something good out of it. And that's it for this video. And I'll be seeing you next video. Bye!